So
this is a delight to have you. I can assure you, those who are here present, some of you staying overnight, some commuters, those of you who are online, it's exciting to try to bring this together. We haven't had an overnight retreat here since March 15th, so over 3 months. And to have this opportunity is just very delightful. And I have a few things I want to say today. I'm going to get that other mask. This thing keeps moving. Just a moment, please. Some people say, I think it makes me look like a duck.
Yes.
Quack is right. Some people think that's what I am. But it's delightful to have everyone here. I think there's a quest within us to have something spiritual in our life. I don't know if you remember earlier on, and maybe it's still going on, essential businesses were allowed to stay open, like a hospital or a drugstore, some of those kind of things. Those are considered essential businesses. But Bishop Peter Baldacchino, who is the bishop in this diocese of Las Cruces, I don't remember what date it was, but he said, faith is an essential business as well. Our spiritual life needs to be attended to. And so even though he got a little flack from the governor of New Mexico, who's done very, very well, he asked that we be allowed to have some kind of church services. Now, we started outside and spread it out there, and he eventually came in at 25% and some other things. The credit changed. But it made me realize that, yes, our faith is essential to us. For many of us, it's not just something, well, that's good, I don't have to go to church for the next 2 months, but it's something we yearn for. And I think this retreat is a response to that. Just so you know, we have over 60 people who are here or who are online who want to be a part of this. And I think that's just a great thing. Some of the people online haven't been able to come all the time. Some are just listening, as you can see. But I thank you all for your interest and your personnel and your task. This is a new attempt for me, doing it with both people in presence as well as online. I've done 2 online retreats and they went very well, but I've never done them together. And so if I look distracted at some point, it's probably because I am. I'm talking to you and looking at the other one, whichever way it is. But if it's too confusing, let me know. I think it's also a reality that we want to respect the coronavirus. It's very serious. It's not something to be fooling around with. And obviously people have gotten sick. You're sitting in here, spread out, and you're wearing masks. As uncomfortable as they are, I ask you please, when you're in here, when you're in a chapel, when you're in a group, that you wear them. Now, if you decide to go for a walk with somebody off at a distance and you're not around anybody else, of course, that's fine. If you're talking to another person, that I can't monitor that, and I'm not going to chase everybody around to see if you're doing it. But if we're certainly in this area, the dining room, we don't get dining room. But the chapel, I ask that you wear them, please. I think that's important. If you have not yet read the participants release and filled that out, I'd ask you to do that and give that to Debbie. That's part of our responsibility as well. So that if someone gets sick, they can do contact tracing. If you're familiar with, where they say, okay, I was there and these other 35 or 40 people were there, so they can call everybody else. So those are important things for us to keep in mind. Thank you all very much. And just kind of a little twist, I have something I'd like to, I don't know if I can do this right. Let's see if I can do this. What do you call, where is it here? There it is. If there is a baby boom 9 months from now, what will happen in 2033? What do you think?
A lot of diapers will be sold.
a lot of 21st birthday parties.
Well, you'll have a bunch of quarantines. Grown? Oh, come on. Give me a break. There'll be a bunch of quarantines. That was underneath there. I thought I could show it up, but I didn't. I'd like to begin, if we can, with just a bit of a prayer, and then we will get into the material. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Everybody online hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Lord God,
Yes.
we ask that you be with us this evening, tomorrow, Sunday, that you might fill our hearts with spirit of love and spirit of hope. We all know that our lives change through the years, And we hope that by talking about this book, Sacred Fire by Ronald Rolheiser, that it will help us to understand more clearly how you are a part of that and how we can help bring new life, even in the times that are difficult times or in the joyous times. Bless all those who are here. Bless those who were unable to come, even though they would have liked to do so, and give us your peace. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Last year, I celebrated my 40th anniversary as a priest, and it was a delight. Thank you. And this year is my 45th anniversary as a Franciscan friar, because I took simple vows in 1975. And yet my faith has been a part of me since my baptism, which was 8 days after I was born. And so that's something that's just integral to my whole life. It's not something that's just added on that I do once in a while. It's part of who I am. And I presume for most of you the same thing, you know, that you were baptized. Anybody here not baptized as an infant? Yeah. Oh, there, okay, we got one. Two. Yeah, most of us are though. Most of us are, and that's good. And I think this weekend gives us an opportunity to look at how our faith changes and how our life changes. And it'll be based on a book by Ronald Rolheiser. This is the hardbound copy. I don't know if any of you have, I see somebody's got the paperback. It's kind of a red cover on the paperback. And I'm not promoting Ronald Rolheiser specifically, but I think he's a good writer. You know, I really think it's worthwhile. You don't have to have read the book to come on the retreat, obviously, but it helps if you read it. Either not all the weekend, all through this weekend. And we may have a book club afterwards if you're interested in reading it together. But if you have a chance to look through it. He helps us to reduce our sense of spirituality and how to grow more close to God and live as authentic human beings as well. Again, I'd like to thank Sister Helen Santa Maria, who's right over here, because I borrowed some of your notes, and you'll probably say, oh, that's my line. So some of hers, you've done this before, and I appreciate that very much. But the biggest impact, I think, comes not just in what's written in the book, even though it's helpful, but it's what's written in your hearts. And to read something and just leave it out there doesn't do us any good. It's when we incorporate that into our life, we can see how it affects us. That's what makes a difference. And I think that's important. And so throughout this weekend, I'm going to try to encourage some interaction, have discussion groups or questions and answers. It's when I had only 12 or 15 people, as I did the last two, it was a little bit easier, but we can still do that. And they'll be splitting up into groups even this evening, so you have some opportunity to do that. And I encourage you to speak. And our faith is not just like some people say, well, I get up in the morning, it's a beautiful day, and I believe in God. Okay, well, but do you believe in God when it's not a beautiful day? Do you believe in God when things are going pretty terrible for your life? And I think that's where God is present in many ways, more so than in just those wonderful days. He's calling us to reflect how we live. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you all in line as well. You can kind of hold up your hand. Yeah, I'm going to ask you, in general, and obviously there's lots of exceptions, but in general, do you see life as a gift or life as a struggle? So I'm going to give you a choice to raise up your hand for one of it. And it's just overall. Do you see life as a gift? Oh, great. How many see life as a struggle? No, that too. I know, I'm not saying you don't. So the majority of you see life as a gift. Let me see that online again. How many saw life as a gift? Okay, and how many said a struggle? Not very many. Okay, that's interesting. I'm surprised at that. Yes, a few do, and it is. But I guess what you're saying is that your basic approach to life is to see it as a gift. And I would say that's the same for me. I believe that life is a gift. And I believe that adult formation is more effective when we are engaged, when we're not just sitting and listening, but that we are speaking and we are telling our own story or learning from one another. And so I'll be doing some presentation material But I also want you to do things in between. You say, okay, 8 o'clock, I'm done. I don't do anything else for the rest of the night. I would hope you see this as a retreat, even those of you who are commuters, those of you who are online in your own homes, that you still spend extra time this evening writing, reading, reflecting, whatever works for you, praying, and in the morning. Don't just get up and do what you normally do and say, oh gosh, it's almost time. I better get over there and watch. And the rest of the day goes normal. Give this some special attention this weekend. That's what it's about. You have a wealth of experience to share with us and with one another. At one point, I asked you to do some writing, not today so much. And so I hope everybody will have some paper. Tomorrow, if you could bring a paper or a pad or something like that and a pen, because I'm going to ask you to write a little bit. I know it's not as easy as chairs, but if that's possible, I would appreciate that. Growing up doesn't happen easily, without effort or without breakdown. And so we need to be patient with ourselves and one another. Maturation is a lifelong journey with different phases, human and spiritual, and it has many setbacks. That is why it can be helpful to have a grasp of the natural seasons of our lives and how these interface with the vision of Christian discipleship and its particular stages. And so I ask, what are the seasons of life? And what are the stages of discipleship? And I have a section here that I'm going to read. It's a little parable that he uses in the beginning of the book on page 4. It says, the renowned writer Nikos Kazantzakis shares a conversation he once had with an old monk named Father Makarios. Sitting with the saintly old man, Kazantzakis asked him, do you still wrestle with the devil, Father Makarios? The old monk reflected for a while and then replied, not any longer, my child. I've grown old now, and he has grown old with me. The devil doesn't have the strength. I wrestle with God now. And Nikos asked him, with God? Exclaimed the astonished young writer. And you hope to win? Father Makarios says, I hope to lose, my child, replied the old ascetic. My bones remain with me still, and they continue to resist. So what he's saying, that life for him has been a struggle and continues to be. That's why I was a little surprised when so many of you said that you found life as a gift and not as a struggle. But it is a struggle. If you think back upon your life, there are difficult moments. And some of us kind of pass over those and move on. But I think it illustrates how there are different forces in our life at different times. When we're a young person, a young adult, we have to deal with certain things. When we're a mature adult, some other things, care of family or responsibilities. When we're aging, another side of responsibilities. I live with a man, Father Ivan, who has dementia, and he's starting to slow down. He's part of a group I was discussing with this morning. And he said something that wasn't real clear, and the guy asked him, could you tell me again? I didn't get that. And he couldn't remember what he said the first time. You know, it's kind of tough. So how do you deal with that? How do I help him? How does he find his worth in the middle of that? I'd like to give you each a chance to think about a significant struggle in your life, or one of the joys, if you prefer, one of the gifts. And then we're going to split into groups of 6 and let you talk about that, because I think it helps us to talk about those significant events. It's not like, oh, I got to go ride in the country yesterday. You know, I went up to Cloudcroft and it wasn't 100 degrees, it was only 75 degrees. Okay, well, that's nice. That's not what I'm talking about, though. It's a nice day. But that's not one of the deep joys of life. Or the struggles. Oh, I got up this morning and I had a flat tire. Father PD told me he had a flat tire a couple days ago. Well, that's disheartening and discouraging. But that's not the kind of stuff I want to talk about. I want you to talk about the inner experience of your life. What is it there that changes who you are? Like in that struggle with God, the struggle with meaning, who we are when we're young or when we're older. And it might be things that happened many years ago. It might be something that's going on right now, or something you still need to face. something you're still facing. You say, well, you know, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to live. It might be 5 years, might be 15 years. I need to start thinking about that. Okay, that's right. Also, while you're talking, I'd ask you to keep in mind that your discussions are confidential. This is not something you go to, well, you wouldn't believe what Bruce said. You know that guy sitting up in front? He told me this story, da, 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 da. No, you don't do that. These are conversations that you keep to yourself because you need to have a sense of trust and awareness of that. I ask you to tell your own story. I hear confessions a lot. Every once in a while, somebody come in and says, oh, my husband, you wouldn't believe what he does. They're going to confession. And they're telling me their husband's confession. I said, no, that's not what I mean. Or my children, they don't go to church. You know, I've done everything I can. I talk to them. They just, okay, I understand, but that's not your confession. That's theirs. Tell me your confession. So tell your story. You understand what I'm talking about? We all like to tell stories about someone else. But at this point, I'm asking you to talk about your own heart, your own life. And I ask you to listen to other people's experiences attentively. This is not a discussion this evening. Sometimes there is, but this is not a time for a discussion. It's a time to speak and be respectful and listen and let other people. And after, we're going to have like 6 people in a group. After each person has spoken, you don't have a big conversation about, oh, that reminds me of this. No, no, no. What I want you to do is to pray for the person on your left. So try to remember what they were talking about. This is part of the Lectio Divina thing, if you're not familiar with that. But to say, now, what was your first name, Yolanda? Okay, Yolanda, she's talking about da-da-da-da, and say just a brief prayer for Yolanda regarding either the joy or a struggle that she shared. I think that's an important thing for us to do. We have 6 places here where we can split up. I think, I don't know how many people here, 36 or 38, something like that, probably, maybe 40. But if you can, one group can stay in here if you want. The small conference room is across there. We have the library, which is kind of over in that corner. 1 or 2 groups can sit out here in the patio, just move the chairs around. Maybe another group can go over in the living room, which is through the atrium on the far end, or over in this walkway toward the dining room. There's some chairs, or out by the rooms, whatever. But just try to get 5 or 6 people together. Don't get 8 or 10. There's not enough time to talk. Okay? I'm not going to have you count off or anything. I'm just going to ask you to form your own groups. But try to do that. And don't spend a lot of time chit-chatting and everything. What is one of the great gifts of your life or one of the struggles that either you have dealt with it or you're still dealing with? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody there well, that way, the online group, what we're going to do if we have it, we may just do it one group. I think we can. I was going to think about splitting it up. I think we'll just stay with this group here. Right? Unless we can get 2. If we can get 2, that'd be better. John, did you have it? I'll talk to John. Anybody questions? Okay, it is now 7:08. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes at least to do this. So each person will have 2 to 3 minutes to talk. So if somebody starts talking for 5 minutes, cut them off. I'm serious. Some people love to hear themselves talk, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. I do too. But if they start going too long, say, please, can you give us time for the rest of it? Oh, but I'm in the middle of my story. Well, you've already talked for 5 minutes. So be gentle, but take some time. So I'd like to come back. It is now 7:09, so how about 7:30? Does that give you enough time? I think that'll give you enough time to share a bit. And then we can, but listen for this. And see Sacred Fire and what he's doing, he's talking about these significant moments in our life. Young adulthood, middle life, and then later. I'll explain more about those specifically, but I just want us to begin with our own experience. It can be your faith experience, or it can be just your personal family experience, or it can be something else. Any questions? I'd like to give each person a chance to talk about one of your gifts or one of your struggles. Just a minute or two, a couple minutes, because we got more people. I don't know how many people are on the group here, about 12, 15?
22.
22. Oh, I don't know if we can split it or not. Well, why don't we just take as many as we can, just right now. And then we'll try to figure it out tomorrow how to split into groups. Okay, anybody want to begin?
I don't mind
I will.
beginning.
Oh, there you go.
I have talking about one of the fears is that the COVID virus. I thought I'd been saying mass for like 50 years plus, and all of a sudden they said, let's close the churches down for like 2 months. And then when they did open it, I wasn't in favor of it. I think they should have waited another month myself. They open up bars and places, and people getting sick again. Crap, I go into church, I got a mask on, and I got everything but rubber gloves almost. And but I'm scared stiff because if us old guys get it, it kills us. And so, you know, I don't joke about this at all. I'm very serious. In fact, when Tom mentioned about they were having this retreat, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not flying in an airplane to go down to Las Cruces here. But anyways, I really am just running scared stiff of this virus. I just pass that on to everybody. That's enough.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Someone else? Yes, Lillian, take your microphone on.
Okay, you mentioned, I think my two greatest gifts in my life, one of them were my parents, who gave me the foundation and a love of people and service, especially my mom. Well, no, I could say my dad too. They taught me so much that as I was growing, of course, you don't really appreciate it until you're much older, and especially after they're gone. And then and my other gift are my children. They have been phenomenal. I'm one of those lucky parents who really had great kids. They've done very well in life, and they're beautiful human beings. And I really thank God for that. As far as my struggles have been mostly throughout my career. I struggled deeply when I was a consultant and I was in Latin America, especially in El Salvador during the war. That was tough. It was tough because the demands that the State Department had on us was beyond and reasonable. And also the conditions that we had to live. It was war was going on, and we had to take care of ourselves. And the other struggle I've had, especially now, I think that my greatest struggle right now is in the work that I do. I'm an accredited representative and I work in immigration. And just today, I had a webinar about what this administration is doing to asylees. And if you know anything about refugees, if you work with them, you know their struggles, you know their fears, and they're going to get that just wiped out. Our government just doesn't want them here. And what has been, you know, for years a standard is going to be taken away. So that's my greatest fear and my greatest struggle and my greatest frustration. That's it. Yes.
Thank you, Lillian. Someone else?
Father Tom, this is
Yes.
this is John. My greatest gift and my greatest struggle were the same thing. 11 years ago, I had cancer. It's a struggle working through that when you lose control of everything in your life and have put all of you into the hands of God and your doctors. But the gift of knowing the value of your life when you're faced with the possibility of losing it is really an amazing gift to get.
Yeah, I can understand that. Someone else?
I'll share. This is Lynn.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Okay. The first part of my life was great suffering. I lost my mom when I was 12 and my dad when I was 17, and many other things happened. The second part of my life, I felt like God blessed me and gave me back everything in different ways in so much abundance. And now, at this stage of my life, I really do work to give back in the ways that I can. but it's a struggle because I'm turned 70 and I don't have the energy I used to have. That's a real challenge for me because it's like I now know what I have to give and I know how to give it, and I'm getting tired. So that's my, but I do looking back on my life now, I look at everything as a gift, even the most terrible years of suffering that went on for quite a long time. Everything seems like grace to me now. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Henry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say that my greatest gift were two: my baptism and my marriage. My greatest struggle today, and I've had many other struggles in my life, but my greatest struggle today is what Father Ron calls how you give your death away. I am a retired Episcopal priest. Most of my life, I engaged in the missionary in Latin America, a seminary professor, many other things. It was when I felt called to that, or was called, or assigned to that. I now have the choice to choose how I'm going to give my death away, how I'm going to engage in my ministry for the rest of my life, however long that is. And I find it very much a struggle.
Thank you, Henry. Now, you've obviously read parts of the book.
Yeah.
I'd like to share something. Oh, go ahead.
Maggie?
Yes. I want to share about my relationship with Mary, Jesus' mother. I grew up cradle Catholic, of course, and we used to pray the rosary as a family every night with the radio. My mom had rosaries for us all over the house, and we wore medals and all kinds of things. And then I kind of grew into my own thoughts and didn't have much to do with Mary anymore. And someone told me that once you give up a religious habit, there's a hole that you need to fill with something else. So I tried doing that with scripture and different things. But as I kept going along in life, and I think it was when I became a mother myself, that I realized that it would be important for me and meaningful for me to try and reconnect in a more real way with Mary and build my relationship with her. And I'm grateful for that opportunity and for the relationship, the ongoing relationship that I feel that I have with her now. That has been a gift of my faith.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Okay, I'll do it. I'm down as Lucy, but I'm called Treadwell. It's the second part of my name. There are reasons. One of my greatest blessing, I think, was meeting Henry, because from the moment we hit eyes, we got married. And I think that it's just been a blessing all the way through, even in the most interesting times. The various terrors or struggles that I have had, right now, my big struggle is my sister has gone into a memory care facility, and I'm reading up various things on how to talk to her because she seems to be going down quickly. And part of that is that she always had these wonderful stories to tell and all these kinds of things. And I feel as though I didn't appreciate them. But as the years went on, I'd heard most of them. And so it's just very difficult to me to acknowledge that she's just 3 years older than me, and she's in a memory facility. And it was a long time getting her there. So it's hard. She's not anywhere near me. I couldn't go visit her anyway, but still I can call up. but conversations are getting more and more difficult.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking of this question myself, and when I was 2.5 years old, as some of you know, my leg was amputated in an accident on a farm, and I almost died. And so that was a pretty significant struggle for me, even though I don't remember it specifically, the event, and my parents. And since then, there have been times it's always been difficult. But the giftedness in that, someone said it's both a struggle and a gift, is that I've come to an appreciation of life, because I could have very easily died that day, very easily died. My dad described what happened, and he's luckily close enough to pull me out. And so it's given me an appreciation for each day to celebrate life. And yet there are struggles and pains and frustrations, but it's like, wow, I'm 68 years old almost. And to think I could have died 66 years ago. And to have that, for me, that's a wonderful gift. And so I don't think, well, that's terrible that I lost my leg, but I think it's great that I survived. You know, that's the way I see it.
Father Tom, I'd like to share. My name's Chris Landavaso. One of my biggest struggles is not having a good relationship with my daughters. Divorced when they were very young. They moved out of town, and the communication amongst us has not been consistent, and it's been very challenging because a lot of times during holidays and when there's a chance for us to get together, something always happens where we're not able to have them here with us in El Paso or even visit there in Phoenix. And so that's something that's been very difficult for me and very hurtful. But as far as the joy, I think getting close to God is one of the joys that I have, and I owe that to my wife, because she has always been close to God, and we married 16 years ago, and we have a great marriage. But if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have gotten as close to God, at least at that time, as I am now. Very highly involved with the church, and very happy because of that. And it's helped me through a lot of difficult times, especially with the struggles that I have with my daughters.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to offer anything?
I will. I'm
Okay, Sylvia or Victoria?
¿Cómo están todos?
Bien, gracias.
I was thinking about that, and what I've come to realize is that in my lifehood career, I would say, I've always been able to attune myself to people and their emotions, and have always been able to see the goodness in them and always try to overlook the badness. So it's been a gift, because as a probation officer for juveniles, I didn't know I was serving God those whole 30 years. Mm-hmm. And when I found out that it was a miracle. Now I'm retired and I do prison ministry. And in 2009, God said to me in my prayers, because I went through a real horrible divorce, a lot of stuff. The struggle was faith. And I church hopped for a bunch of years. And finally, out in the desert in 2009, God said, on Easter sunrise service, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I already did my time, Lord. I did 30 years with juvenile delinquents. And I did not know what he meant. So as he struggled to heal me with my life, and struggle with marriage and kids and life, when I moved to New Mexico, back to New Mexico in 2014, I became a prison ministry teacher, servant, and that in itself is a gift.
Yes.
And so for me, the willingness to serve is the gift, but a struggle. It's a struggle because I'm human. And as a human, we want to do and say things. And sometimes, like my son says, Mom, how come you have to say God's name in vain? And I go, I didn't realize I did. I guess I said, oh God, one time, and he called my attention to it. And so there's the struggle, because that's what I'm trying to say. Faith is a struggle to be someone that teaches. And as a teacher, you're sometimes an example. And so I find it hard to be that example. So that's a struggle and a gift.
Sure. That's great. We're coming close to the time when I'm going to pull it back together. Would someone like to say a prayer? And we're not going to pray for each and every person. And it's hard to tell who's on the left because of,
May I, Father?
Sure.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Abba, Father, we are before you with all ears and eyes, waiting to hear your word, Lord. We're waiting to learn from you, Lord. We're waiting to reach a point, Lord, where we can understand what is going to be said to us and revealed to us over the weekend. We thank you for the ability to meet, whether online, in person, or even however we're meeting, Lord. I want to thank you for all the gifts that you've given us this day, Lord. And I want to thank you for the struggles, because as we struggle, it gives us an opportunity to get on my knees and say thank you. As we meet tomorrow, Lord, we thank you for continued health and well-being. In your name, we pray.
Amen. Thank you. Go ahead. Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate each one of you sharing.
Okay, I think we have about everybody here. We're ready to start. We might be missing one person here, but that's okay. We're going. How was your experience in the groups? Did it work out okay? Did you feel comfortable with it? Someone asked me if we're going to keep the same groups, and yes, the answer is yes, for a couple of reasons. One, because you develop a trust with the people who are there. Whoops. And the second reason is because it's less complicated. we don't have to count off every time and figure out where we're going to sit at and who's going to go where. So just plan on those groups for pretty much the rest of it. There may be one time when I ask you just to have a dyad, which is one other person, but otherwise we'll keep the same groups. Okay? The group we did all right, even though there was 15 or 18 or whatever. 22, did you say?
22.
Not everybody got to talk online, but most of us did. Okay. How was your experience? Did you find something to talk about? Yeah. Usually it's not hard to find something to talk about when you get into the right kind of an environment. It's developing the trust and the openness and some kind of guidance to get started. Ronald Rolheiser, in his book, The Sacred Fire, focuses on the struggle. He starts out, I don't know if, I've also noticed, have any of you ever heard of a book called The Road Less Traveled?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great book. Does anybody remember what the first line of the book is?
Yes, life is hard.
Close. Life is difficult. Life is difficult. I read this book 35 years ago, and I still remember that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a kind of strange way to begin. But it's true. Life can be very difficult indeed. And the hope that we have from Ronald Rolheiser is that it's like that wrestling with God. And Father Macario's just keeping at it because he knows there's something there. Wrestling with the devil for a while, now I'm wrestling with God, but he just keeps at it because he knows it's worth the effort. And there are people who kind of give up, and that's pretty rough. There are three, according to Rolheiser in this book, three phases, in a sense, of our spiritual journey, corresponding with three great struggles in our life. The first one he calls essential discipleship. Essential discipleship. Discipleship in terms of becoming a follower of Jesus and sharing that in the ministry. Essential that you really got to have this one before you can ever get started. And the essential, actually the essential is a little bit before that, and that's childhood. Childhood where we're with our family, and our family takes care of us. We're little with young kids or whatever, we're dependent on our parents, and we're happy that they're taking care of us. We're delighted that we don't have to think about who's paying the electric bill, or where the food's going to come from, or if it's going to be cold tonight. The reality is that some children still don't have an easy life, but at least that initial stage of life is meant to be in the home, in a great loving space. Not always that, and I know, but that's what it's meant to be. And then the kind of youth or young adulthood is what he calls the essential discipleship, where it's a struggle to get out of our lives, or get our lives together. Get our lives together, in a sense, is the way he puts it. To figure out who I am, what I'm going to be, and what's going to be my commitments in life, or start to. Tomorrow, I'm going to spend, tomorrow morning, the first session, I'll go through that area with some depth. The second level is called mature discipleship. Mature discipleship. And that's the struggle to give our lives away. So now it's like, once you start to get your life together, and you know who you are, then what are you supposed to do with it? Give it to somebody else. It's not just for myself, but it's a recognition that as an adult, that we need to be generous. We need to be generous. And that has all kinds of phases in that. And I'll spend the next two, which would be Saturday afternoon, talking about that particular, 2 sessions on Saturday, talking about that level. Mature discipleship. The third, anybody read the book and knows the third one is?
Giving your death away.
That's right. It's radical discipleship, the struggle to give our deaths away. Now, when I first read this, which is about 4 or 5 years ago, I thought, what is he talking about? Radical discipleship, okay, that makes some sense. I mean, somebody just decides, like Jesus is sort of a radical person. I mean, he created a whole lifestyle and a spiritual journey, and he calls us to make a radical choice to follow him. I'm a Franciscan. St. Francis of Assisi made a radical choice to leave a very comfortable lifestyle as the son of a cloth merchant and a loving mother to become a friar who lived, or he didn't call himself a friar, but a brother, to be poor, to serve the poor. Now that's pretty radical. I mean, that was a complete change of lifestyle. People thought he was crazy. And then after a while, they began to say, well, maybe it's not quite so crazy. By the time he died, there were over 5,000 men, I don't know how many women, lay secular Franciscans who were following. And one of the most popular people. And for the millennium, 1,000 to 2,000, Francis was in one of the Time magazine things. The person of the millennium, one of the first 3 or 4 in there. I thought, that's pretty significant. So his was a radical lifestyle, a radical discipleship, but it's a struggle to give our death away. And that's a little confusing, but we'll spend 2 sessions on that as well. And there are things that I think are important to us, things that we've worked on to. I'd like to read another section from the book here. I'm not real big on just reading out loud to people, but I think I want to focus on a few things. So when you're reading it, you say, oh, I remember he said something about that. This is a couple paragraphs. It says, once the sheer pulse of life, so strong in us during our youth, begins to be tempered by the weight of our commitments and the grind of the years, more of our sensitivities begin to break through. And we sense more and more how we have been wounded and how life has not been fair to us. New demons emerge: bitterness, anger, jealousy, and a sense of having been cheated. Disappointment cools the fiery energies of youth, and our enthusiasm for life begins to be tempered by bitterness and anger as we struggle to accept our limits and make peace with a life that now seems too small and unfair. Where we once struggled to properly control our energies, now we struggle to have enough energy. Where we once struggled not to fall apart, we now struggle not to petrify. And where we once struggled with Eros, our sexual god of passion, we now struggle with Lyssa, the goddess of anger. And And where our sympathies once were with the prodigal son, they now are more with his older brother. As we age, we begin more and more to struggle with God. Someone once quipped that we spend the first half of our lives struggling with the 6th commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, and the second half struggling with the 5th commandment, thou shalt not kill. It's like that old joke, you know, they asked a couple that had been married for many, 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 many years and said, did you ever think of divorce? Nope, I did think of murder. That may be a simplification, but it is a fertile image. Indeed, the famous parable of the prodigal son and his older brother can serve as a paradigm for this. The prodigal son, illustrating the first half of life, is very much caught up in the fiery energies of youth and is metaphorically struggling with the devil, as the story about Father Macarius went. Struggling, and the older brother, illustrating the second half of life, struggling instead with resentment, anger, and jealousy. And it is metaphorically and reality wrestling with God. Can you see some of that distinction that he makes there? You know, that we're trying to figure out how to harness our energies, and now we're trying to just find enough energy, kind of make it through the day. One of the people, Lynn, where's Lynn? You don't mind if I say this, do you? What you said? Okay, I wanted to ask her first. Lynn is on the. She said, "Do you want to just tell him what you said?"
Oh, well, I said that at this stage of life, I know what I have to give and I know how to give it, but I'm 70 and I'm getting tired. So I don't always have the energy to do everything that I would like to do.
Very good. Thank you. And that's a reality. I'm sure you're not the only one that feels that. About the time we sort of feel like we understand life and have something to share with somebody, oh, God. I'm worn out. I believe it's at those moments that we really need to reach out, though. Not that we have to have a lot of activity. Sometimes we equate value with productivity or activity. The more I can do, the better I am. There's a good friend of mine, Carl McGrew, who's been volunteering here for about 8 or 9 years. Many of you know him. And now he's 9 years older than when he started. I don't know how old he is now. He's late 70s. I don't know how old he is. And he's really having a struggle because I just can't do what I used to do. I said, Carl, that's okay. You don't have to do what you used to do. Don't try it. But it's like he wants to continue to be active, mentally alert, and physically able to do things. I said, that's fine. That's fine. We'll find somebody else. I think the retreat is not a time to straighten out your life, but it's to give you some time to think and talk a bit about the significant struggles and the gifts in your life, whether it happened a few years ago or a long time ago. This is not a time to resolve it. Say, okay, got that all figured out. I took 2 days off. I'm all set. Nah, probably not. But it's to recognize, acknowledge the struggle, and draw strength from God for one another. One of my favorite sections from the Bible is from Moses. You all probably know the story well, how he was born in Egypt, and raised by the Pharaoh's daughter, but then he got in an argument, killed somebody, and ran away because they were after him. And while he's tending sheep, he sees this bush burning and goes over there, and he said, well, that's pretty unusual. And God says, I'm sending you down to Egypt to talk to the Pharaoh and let my people go. Oh, I don't think that's a good idea. They're going to kill me if I go back there. And so he's very hesitant. But God tells him something in Exodus 3:12 that is very special. It was told to me by a woman who was trying to encourage me. I'd been a associate pastor for a few years. I'd just been made a pastor. I was 32 years old. Pastor of a parish of 1,400 families and a school for about 300 or 400 kids. And I thought, she says, here, let me show you. She made a little what do you call it? Like crown and cross stitch, I think it's called. It says, I will be with you. I will be with you. That's what God said to Moses. And he says it to each one of us. Even though we get discouraged, even we get tired, we're not sure what's going to happen, we get upset, we get bitter, whatever, I will be with you. He's not going to abandon us. He's not going to walk away from us. I ask that you try to maintain an awareness of that presence of God. That yes, we as human beings have much to do, but we don't do it on our own. And that the Lord is there to give us new life and strength. Whether you're a commuter, whether you're online, whether you're here overnight, as I said, try and make this a sense of retreat. Somebody was teasing me once after the retreat. They said, you know, I couldn't find the remote for the television in my room. They were staying here. And I'll say, I bet you couldn't find the television either. That is by intent, that we don't have televisions. I've gone to retreat centers where they do, believe it or not, because they also have conferences and they rent out the rooms for weddings and other kinds of stuff. And so they feel like they have to have that. I don't think it belongs there. I don't think it does. Take your time yourself. If you want to talk with other people, that's fine. We have a wealth to share with one another. If you do need Wi-Fi, I can give you the Wi-Fi password for that. For those of you who are staying here. If you can remember it, HCRC, Holy Cross Retreat Center, 1954. So if you need that, just put it in. I'm not going to deny that because sometimes people have to contact someone. But don't spend your whole time on doing that. When we built the Hermitage, we intentionally did not put Wi-Fi there. So if they want something, they got to come down here to get it. And I say you can't do it, but you got to make some effort. You're free. Those of you who are here, you know the property, I presume. What's your first name, Bob? Have you been here before? Okay, so you know the property. Is anybody that does not know the property? Everybody okay? We have we have a beverage room right up this way, kind of angled to the left. There's some soft drinks in there. If you'd like to buy us soft drinks or water or whatever, you can get that. You can also make coffee in the morning. If you'd like to have coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning when you wake up, go right on ahead. I'm not going to be there to make it for you, but you can make it yourself. There's instructions. And make a pot of coffee and leave it there for somebody else. There's tea or hot chocolate stuff there too. Want that? The main chapel is unlocked all night, all the time actually. So if you want to go in there, that's fine. I would suggest we're trying to get people, by the way, to sit in the same chair throughout the weekend, and the same place in church, and the same place in the dining room. I'm not saying you can't talk to other people, but just for the safety's sake, for the terms of commission. And we will have people come in, by the way, during the meals to clean in here and to sanitize and whatever. It just seems like it makes sense. So if you're going to go over in the chapel, pick a spot that you like, and when you come back, just kind of go there, rather than go around touching it. And in the dining room tomorrow, we're going, for those of you who are staying here for breakfast or will be here for breakfast, we're only going to have 2 at a table. You'll notice that when you go in there, all the other chairs have been moved. So just pick a spot and they're separated out. We may have to use with the other dining room. We have a smaller dining room too. We'll see if we need it. We can go in there as well. By the way, is there anybody who is a commuter or overnight who's not going to be here for breakfast tomorrow? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, okay, sure. If you are a commuter or overnight, who is of those people who is not going to be here for breakfast tomorrow? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that what it is, or 8? Okay, that's just helpful. There's no sense in them fixing food for people who are not going to be here. You're welcome, of course. But and then on Sunday, will it be the same thing on Sunday? Okay, it's not a big deal. If you want to come anyhow, they always make an offer if you decide to change your mind. Let's see. Can you think of anything else, Debbie? Okay. All right. In that case, I just have a closing song. It's called You Are Mine. And I'm sure you are many of you familiar with this song, but for some reason, as I was preparing for this retreat, it just really came to me. Okay. Now, thank you. I didn't know that. See, I learned something. I'm learning all that. Okay, this is a song. If you're familiar with the song and would like to join in, please do. And I think this is a beautiful witness of even throughout our life, from young people to older, even though there's some struggles and difficulties, that the Lord is there with us. And sing along if you'd like. I will come to you in the silence. I will lift you from all your fears. You will hear my voice. I claim you as my choice. Be still now and know I am here. I am hope for all who are hopeless. I am eyes for all who long to see. In the shadows of the night, I will be your light. Come and rest in me. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I have called you each by name. Come and follow me, I will bring you home. I love you and you are mine. I am strength for all the despairing, healing for the ones who dwell in shame. All the blind will see, the lame will all run free, and all will know my name. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I have called you each by name. Come and follow me, I will bring you home. I love you and you are mine. I am the door that leads all to freedom. I am the peace the world cannot give. I will call your name, embracing all your pain. Stand up now, walk and live. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I have called you each by name. Come and follow me, I will bring you home. I love you and you are mine. I love you and you are mine.